This is the 46 of 46 podcast October sessions, where we'll talk all things spooky Adirondacks and more. From Bigfoot encounters on the NPT to ghostly sightings in the trees. We'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who dare to climb them. From Adirondack Bigfoots to haunted lakeside bark huts. It's all here on the 46 of 46 October sessions. Welcome back, everyone, to another October Sessions here on the 46 of 46 podcast, where nothing is off the table. We're going to get spooky, and we're going to have some fun. And guess what? It's another Bigfoot episode. Bigfoot and more. It's October, so why not? If you're familiar with the Sasquatch subject, you likely are aware of the infamous Sasquatch sighting in Whitehall, New York from 1976. Whitehall borders the southeastern blue line of the Adirondack Park to the west, and then the Vermont border a few miles to the east. Tonight I'll be speaking with Whitehall native Paul Bartholomew, where we'll talk all things Bigfoot and more, both in and beyond the blue line, and maybe even give you a slightly new perspective regarding this fascinating and vastly misunderstood subject. Paul is an investigative researcher of unexplained phenomena and the co-author of the books Bigfoot Encounters in New York and New England, Documented Evidence, Stranger Than Fiction, as well as the books Monsters of the North Woods and Mysteries of the North Woods. He has appeared on or worked alongside with investigators for cable network shows such as History Channel's Monster Quest, Bigfoot in New York, and Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot, Vermont, plus many more. Paul is here to talk to me tonight about Bigfoot in the Blue Line. Paul, welcome to the 46 of 46 podcast, and thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hello, how are you?
I am super excited to discuss this subject with you tonight, not even for the podcast, but just for me personally. It's been a real long-time interest of mine, and believe it or not, I've actually never been able to find anybody here in the Adirondacks with an interest in it or really an understanding of the subject. And also nobody willing to really say much about the whole Bigfoot thing, which actually kind of surprises me because I know encounters and activity, they exist here, they happened in the past, and they still happen today. But, people tend to be kind of scared to talk about it, so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, this phenomena is nothing new, and it can be traced back, hundreds of years. So this is part of our heritage and part of our history. But there is a taboo attached to it. And if you're somebody who is, let's say, in law enforcement or somebody in big standing business-wise and stuff, you may not want publicity attached to it. So I do understand that there is a stigma attached to it, but we have very reputable people who've had sightings of whatever these things are.
Sure, yeah, and that's what I've noticed from my research, just, looking online, listening to shows, talking with people, there's definitely a stigma attached to it that it's some crazy person having these encounters and whatnot. But it's just, you'll talk to people, it's just everyday people, doctors, law enforcement people, but, they don't want to talk about it. Like you said, doctors, students, accountants, every sort of person you could think of are having these encounters. And to me, that's almost one of the things that you don't hear is that these are just credible people having these encounters with Bigfoots and Sasquatch or however you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the witness has everything to lose and very, very little to gain when they come forward with their account. So many times I'll talk to people and they want to remain in an anonymous status. That happens quite a bit. And if you're a policeman or whatever, I remember Dan Gordon had an encounter. Dan was my neighbor, and he had an encounter in 1982 outside of Whitehall, heading towards the East Bay area. And he was with another policeman at the time, and the creature crossed in front of their cruiser. Now, that's probably the most common sighting that we get from anybody is you'll be driving along and something runs across the road in front of you. Well, whatever it was crossed the road in 3 steps. Said it was about 7 to 8 feet tall, kind of hunched over, long swinging arms, and very agile. They pulled over to the side. Dan got out. The other officer remained in the car. Dan tried to follow with his weapon drawn and couldn't even come close to keeping up with it. Whatever it was, to cross the road in 3 steps was very impressive, because my brother is about 6'1" or so, and he tried to cross a smaller road than the highway that they saw this on. And it took him 5 or 6 steps to get across the road. So if you're crossing that road in 3 steps, and he's taking long, exaggerated steps, then whatever it is very large and very agile, and it sort of takes it out of the realm of a conventional animal such as a bear or something. Because if you've ever seen bear out in the wilderness, when they stand up and are on two legs, they're kind of awkward, but they just take a little steps. Certainly, you couldn't mistake a bear crossing the road for what these reports are. But anyways, Dan Gordon did not want to be named, become known as the Bigfoot cop. So he had to keep this story quiet for 22 years or so before he finally came forward with it. And he actually passed a polygraph test that was arranged by the History Channel. And and as far as that goes, no one ever really questioned his sincerity about it, because he was such a good witness, and he had another witness who saw the same thing right with him at the same time. So it's difficult. That's one of those confirmation sightings that really is difficult if you're a skeptic to explain out of hand.
Sure, I think you really hit the nail on the head, too, when you said they have absolutely nothing to gain and only things to lose, by coming forward with their story. And that's ultimately probably why most people won't come forward with their stories in this subject. So you've published numerous books. You're from Whitehall, New York, which is, basically in the Adirondacks. Could you give us a little more insight and background as to what you do as an investigative researcher of unexplained phenomena? I know you research more than just Bigfoot, but what exactly would you say that entails?
Right. Basically, we've been doing this about 40 years or better, and we take down the information as accurately as possible. Whatever phenomena is reported, or you've had a sighting, let's say, of an unknown object in the sky, an unknown creature, paranormal phenomena, whatever it is, we take down the information as accurately as possible and document it so that there's a record of it. Many times, if you don't get that initial information down, that report gets lost, or it becomes not as accurate as if you were, reporting it that day. As time goes on, memories fade and details get lost and things like that. So we try to record this phenomena just to have a permanent record of it. And what we found is that in regards to, let's say, the Bigfoot phenomena, the Sasquatch phenomena or whatever, there is a long history here. It goes back to the Algonquin and the Iroquois, legends of stone giants or giant men of the mountains. If you take into account the Native American histories of the Wendigo and whatnot, Samuel Champlain talked about that with a creature called the Gagao that he wrote about in his journals. So the history here is rich and deep, and as time progresses, as you get closer to now, as let's say you get into the 1800s, then these creatures, this phenomena, you would use the term not Bigfoot, because Bigfoot didn't come into the vernacular until the 50s or so. You would use things like strange bear, creature, or the one that's most common, wild man. And once you do wild man, let's say you put it in a search engine for a newspaper, you will be flooded, inundated with reports of bipedal hairy creatures that are cited and written about in newspaper accounts from that time period. So this is a consistent pattern of sightings that goes all the way back to the Algonquin and Iroquois, right up to present day. From the Stone Giant accounts to accounts like what Dan Gordon had. So this is a very interesting phenomenon. Now, if I'm a skeptic and I say there's nothing to it, that it's not a physical phenomena, that it's just imaginary, then it's important to study from that aspect, because we should know, why are we seeing these creatures? Why is this such a consistent human experience? So either way you want to look at it, this is important to study what's going on here.
Sure. So now, with there being so much reported, on an official level, back in the day, like you mentioned in the old newspapers, if you research wild man, why do you think, or at what point do you think this subject became such a taboo kind of discussion?
Well, in the day, if you go back to, let's say, the